In today's episode of our photography review show, we're going to be reviewing 37 photographers. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. Now I hope you had a great week and I hope you're ready for another set of full photography reviews. For those who don't know me, my name is Jakub. I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex in England. And for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been reviewing photos for my friends and colleagues. And it's been very successful. So we decided that we're going to offer this to our friends and to our photography community here at Clever Photographer. Now, it's been working very well and we've been getting more and more photos from more and more photographers. And this is the reason why we have to limit the entries and we're always going to look at 1 or 2 of your best photos and review them. That's also the same reason why we have to take the show and divide it between 3 parts. We usually look at the landscape photographers first, then we look at the mixed team photographers, and we end up by looking at the rest of the photography themes you send us. So it's gonna be lots of fun, but before that I wanted to remind you that we also have a Clever Photographer Academy, brand new Facebook group where people who like photography join and meet there. What we do is, during the week we look at your photos, we give you more feedback, we run a regular photography competition, we answer your photography questions, and we just have a lot of fun and we work on different photography subjects and it's really worth to join us. So make sure you head to the Facebook, search for Clever Photography Academy and join us. It's already 200 of us and the group just keep growing. Now, we don't want to take any more of your time, so let's jump straight into it and let's start by reviewing your photos. And here we are with the second part where we're looking at photographer with the mixed team photography styles. Those are the photographers who send us multiple pictures and usually it's like a mixture of landscape and portrait or travel and macro and so on. So we have 9 photographers to look at and let's jump straight into it. So first one is from Annika. Annika, I have 2 pictures from you here. First one right here, second one right here. Let me just see if I can reset the edits and let's have a look at them. So the first impression, first of all, what we're looking at is like a really nice sunset here with the trees and a really nice silhouette effect. Really nicely captured. And then we have this kind of macro capture of this flower with a really nice bouquet at the back. So on the first one, I think I quite like the capture, I quite like the idea, I quite like the bouquet. What I don't like is the mixture of the color. I think the choice of the color where you have this kind of brown dark flower with again brown dark background. I think the contrast is really tricky here and the background itself take away lots of attention from the flower itself. Also, I think there is a little bit of issue with the depth of field. Some parts are sharp, some part isn't. There's like this orange things which I'm not really sure what it is because of the blur on it. So Annika, I'm not 100% sure about this one, but we'll come back to it. Although I really like this one. I like what you've done here. I really enjoy the silhouette. I enjoy the sun. It's really nice. And this is out of the 2 definitely my favorite one. So let's start. Technically, right here we have a really nice exposure to start with. There is a light coming from one side, which kind of illuminates mostly this part of the flower. And I wonder if this was photographed in studio or like an interior. That's what it looked like anyway. I totally get the idea, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see if we can edit it again. Yeah, so it's a little bit kind of bluer at the back, but anyway, when it comes to macro photography, it used to be very popular to have only very small parts of the items or elements in focus and have everything else blurred. That is now a little bit out of the trend, to be honest, because it was just overwhelming. You have these big prints where you have just really tiny part in focus, and really what now becoming more trendy is to pick an element on the flower or on the main subject and have it all in focus. So for example, if you have like a rose, you would have the whole rose flower in focus and then maybe everything else blurred. Either way, it's an interesting flower. Again, technically, I think I'm a little bit confused about the depth of field. There's unfortunately no information here to give you some feedback about how your camera was set, but as you can see, some parts here like are really in focus and then some not. And again, I think the biggest problem with this picture is the choice of the color and the background. So you're kind of losing an idea of what exactly is happening there. There is like a really nice spider web on it. And to be honest, if I would picture something like this, and if I have such a similar background, I would go for higher f-stop to remove the depth of field as much as possible and get maybe the full flower in focus, so that way it's not as confusing. So I think that's technically one problem. I think the light is quite harsh from the side, so I would be looking for some diffusion. What I really like is the kind of bouquet background, as I mentioned earlier. I think that looks quite cool, but again, the choice of the background isn't really the best. When it comes to composition, it's interesting is that kind of almost like a mobile phone panoramic portrait shape, which follows the flower. I don't think there is necessarily anything wrong about it. I think if I would be looking at what to work on, it would be more the technical part of it when it comes to setting of your camera, setting of your light, and then the focusing for the actual subject. Post-processing, I quite like it. I quite like how it's cool. I don't think you can do much more. Generally, I'm not a huge fan of completely black background, so something to work on. I think it's much better when there is at least a little bit of gradient or some kind of shades of gray. Always works a little bit better. But either way, it's a good try. Annika, thank you very much for sending us this photo, but let's move on another one. So another one here, a really cool sunrise or sunset over the trees. I think it works really well. Technically, I think it's super well captured, especially with the sun. As you know, there are two ways how to capture sun generally. One is with a really nice glow around it. And the glow has to be really with a nice gradient, making sure that there is a detail in the sun. And the second option is what you done to have a really kind of formed sun in a circle with defined edges. And I think you done really well capturing that. So well done on that. The trees work for me right here. If I would talk about the composition, I think it's just a shame that you have 3 trees here and 1 tree here. I think that would bring a little bit of imbalance for the whole picture. To be honest, what would be the best would be completely get reduce of the actual trees. So to get something like this, that immediately create really nice balanced composition, and it makes it work really well. That would be one option. Of course, you could do more. You could kind of really push it to the each side, or see if you could do something else. Maybe just something like this and so on. Either way, it's really nice. I'm a big fan of the silhouette effect. I think it works very well. It's just something for the future to look at, trying to avoid the spaces without the trees if they're not same on each side. Especially when you're placing the sun in the middle, you're really looking on a balance composition on each side of the photo, which really works as far as here. Then once you start to add the big trees, it starts to get a little bit confusing. But that would be a really picky. I think this picture is really nice, and I like it a lot. When it comes to post-processing, there's nothing wrong with it. I think I would maybe add a little bit more darkness, as you can see some of the details here in the actual shadows. When I went ahead and I kind of opened the shadows, I know that there are some kind of like electric lines and more of the tree. I think you can just add some more contrast, and that kind of removes it. You can also do it locally. You can simply just add a linear gradient down here and do it just down here. And again, adding some contrast just to avoid that. Also, keep an eye on these artifacts, like one right here and one right here, one right here. That could be your sensor dust or anything like that, just to make sure that you can get a really nice and clean picture. It can be really easily removed. simply by using this spot removal tool in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw. Either way, Annika, thank you very much. I love this photo. And with the macro, don't worry about it. Keep trying. Next time, try to pick a subject which has a background which is a bit more contrast to it. So let's say white on black or so on, and keep shooting, because we would love to see more pictures from you in the future. Moving on the next photo. So let's have a look here. Let's just make sure that we are reset, and let's have a look. So Deasy Junita. So we have two pictures from you, just for you and for everybody in the future. When it comes to sending pictures for reviews, we want them to be without any signatures, without any watermarks, and without any frames around them. Why? For example, on your example, what you really want from the person who is doing a review on your photos, you want them to focus only on your photo and on your artwork. You don't want them to focus on the font you're using for your signature. You don't want them to focus on your frames and so on. In this case, for example, as a human being, when you're looking at the pictures, your eyes get automatically attracted by the brightest and whitest spots on the picture. Now, once you add a white frame, that's where the all attention goes before anything else, and I think it's a little bit of a shame. So for this time, I'm gonna rate them. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually crop them around, so then I don't have to pay attention to the frames. So we have one photo right here and one photo right here. So let's do this. 1 second. Again, one right here, one right here. And there we are. So let's talk about your photos. So we have this sunrise, sunset, or sun sneaking through the forest, which is quite nice, quite interesting, quite dramatic scene, and a lovely idea with the tree right here. Quite like that. Looking at this one, it's some kind of chicken or cockerel, obviously, standing in some kind of cage or something with a really kind of strong bouquet. It's quite interesting. It's almost on the edge of some kind of fine art photography, and I quite like it. It's quite nice. So let's have a look at both of the photos. Starting right here, technically, it's a lovely capture. I really like your kind of star effect on the sun. It's a shame that you're getting this kind of glare and sun artifacts coming out. There is one here as well. It takes lots of attention away from your photo. Multiple different ways of how you can work with this. Obviously, position yourself in a different angle, making sure that you're keeping an eye after you take a pictures. Have a look at the back of the camera and see what you captured. Again, you can make sure that you're using your lens hood. You can also use different filters, and just making sure that you can avoid this. It could be removed in Photoshop. It would take a little bit of work. Sometimes it's easier than the other times, depends really on the situation. I think with that much of a green, you could probably remove it in Photoshop, but that's probably my main thing to focus on. Also keep an eye on your exposure. I think especially in this part, it's looking like it's a little bit burned. Let's have a look at it. When we talk about whites, for example, just keep an eye on them. It looks like there are some details, so good for you. But anyway, as always, keep an eye on the exposure to make you sure you get some details in whites on your photo. So other than that, technically, I think it's quite nice. It's interesting light. So when we talk about composition, it's quite interesting. I really like how these kind of green bits creating like a leading line towards the actual sun. That's quite nicely done. I quite like the sun behind the tree. I think it would be a little bit nicer if it would be even a little bit more hidden, because really the sunburst takes lots of attention away from the rest of the photo. But other than that, I think it's quite cool, and I quite like the idea behind it. I think it's nicely done. When it comes to post-processing, let's have a look at your white balance just by using auto. I think a little bit more of the warmth and the purple tint would help here, just as it shows in the Lightroom. Other than that, you could add a little bit of a vignette or a little bit more just to kind of close the whole picture. Of course, that you could use the masking and maybe highlight a little bit more the actual let's see, let's close the auto masking to actually highlight a little bit more the leading lines, to do something like this and create even more contrast. You can add another one and maybe do a little bit of burning, so actually make some of the areas darker and so on. So other than that, very good. Deasy, thank you so much for sending us this one. Talking about this, interesting photo. It almost looking like it was kind of watercolor painted. I quite like what you done. It's a style I used to see a few years back, especially with the kind of safari pictures and so on. The really heavy vignetting, I think, work really well here. I think it's a little bit of a shame that we don't get more details, or that the picture isn't a higher quality, because when I zoom in, I see lots of kind of blur and lots of noise on it. Let's have a look at your settings. So you use 45mm lens, 5.6 f-stop, 1/4000 of a second, and ISO 6400. Deasy, I'm sure you know, but just as a reminder, the lower you have your ISO, the less noise you're gonna get. I'm not sure about the situation how the picture was captured, but maybe a tripod, because for capturing an animal like this, you definitely don't need to be on 1/4000 of a second, and you could push down the ISO and lose some of the noise. Other than that, I think it's quite nicely captured. Obviously, there is a movement, the bird is there, and I quite like the effect, you know, so the composition is quite nice. I would just make sure that maybe the net is straight, which can be really easily fixed here in geometry. You could do something like this, or actually push it around to get less of the kind of something more like this. And other than that, this is a lovely photo. Thank you so much for sending it to us, and I hope to see more of your photos in the future. Moving on the next photos, we have a Geoff here, and we have two pictures from you. So let's move and let's have a look at them. Let's see if we can reset them. I think this is original, and this one as well. Okay, let's talk about them. So first of all, here, the bridge with the gentleman actually sailing through on a Bronington boat. Quite interesting. Daylight photo, obviously more kind of travel photography. I like the kind of movement. I like what's happening here. Obviously, I would prefer if the boat would be there in the full size, which would either mean the boat go a little bit further, but then you would maybe lose part of the bridge, or for you to be a little bit further and being able to capture the whole scene. I think that would add even a little bit more to the actual thing. But other than that, it's quite nice. It's a nice storytelling photo. On this one, I really like the sunset. You're getting a little bit of the vignette here, you're getting some of your sensor dust coming through here, and you also get this piece of tree which really takes lots of attention away, and it's a shame, but we'll come to it. So let's have a look at it technically. Looking at your settings, ISO 200, f10, 1/80th of a second is quite alright setting. Just as a reminder, again, ISO 100 is the ultimate goal, especially in a daylight situation like this. You should be able to achieve that with your camera. Maybe bring down the f-stop a little bit. F10, I would go somewhere around 7, 8, 9 here, and you would get a little bit of extra light into your camera. I think other than that, everything is sharp, including the people. So that's quite nice. The light is quite nice. I don't really mind that it's daylight photo. Obviously, these kind of things only happening during the daylight, so there is nothing wrong about that. But when we talk about the composition, again, mentioning the fact that it would be much better if the boat would be there in a full kind of shape. If you could see it all the way, that would really help here. You could also step a little bit more towards the side and get more of this path, which would create a nice leading line there as well. But then obviously more you step to the side, more you lose the bridge. But in overall, it's quite nice. Again, maybe I would crop it a little bit tighter, because looking at the top of the picture, you get lots of these trees which don't really bring anything to the scene. You could get something like this and make it a little bit more dramatic, and maybe use the advantage of the cropping to yourself, because again, when it comes to cropping and when it comes to your framing, you only really want to keep in a photo anything that adds something to your scene, and I think by cropping it a little bit more like this, I think it helps a lot. When it comes to post-processing on this one, I think you're getting lots of green tints, so let's have a look at the auto and what it does here on white balance. And yeah, that's a little bit better. You can see how it kind of really pushed the tint up, and that's because your original has a lot of green coming through on the boat, on the bridge, on the actual trees, and that's usually when the camera is capturing something where there is lots of green, like in this case, it brings with itself a lot of green tint, and it's a shame it's not very natural. I think this is much more natural and it's looking much cooler. What I would do is I would maybe add a little bit of vignette to focus really just on the boat and the bridge. Again, you could maybe even close the top of your picture with the liner gradient. Something like this could work quite well. Just bring down the exposure, and then you could create another mask and use the radial gradient and maybe bring more attention towards the boat by doing something like this. Other than that, lovely Geoff, thank you very much for sending it to us. Brilliant picture. Moving on the next photo, right here we have the sunset over the sea with the boat right here. So let's have a look at the details. Talking about technical data, unfortunately they're not here. However, when I zoom in, let's have a look right here. Sadly, I see lots of noise all over the water and the sky as well. Although the sky is very, very nice, I think in overall the scene is lovely. I think the boat in the middle really works. It's just like the picture isn't really finished. Again, from the technical point of view, you get this vignette which is probably created by your lens. So make sure that when you import your pictures in something like Lightroom, that you use the optics. You can enable the lens correction and remove chromatic aberration, and then it actually removes the vignettes for you. Again, another thing to keep an eye on is the sensor dust, which you can see right here, for example, and a little bit here as well. You can just click on visualize spots, and you can see one here, and again one here, and once you switch it off, you can see it kind of takes it away. And probably the biggest thing when it comes to composition is this tree. Now this could be probably quite easily removed in Photoshop. It just takes lots of attention away from the whole scene, and I think if it wouldn't be there, it would be a perfect scene. Now when it comes to composition, I would also step a little bit further. I would avoid this black edge because it doesn't really add anything to your scene. Again, coming to the same idea, if it doesn't have to be there, if it doesn't add anything to your photo, just take it away. So I would probably do something like this when it comes to cropping, because obviously your sky is the main subject, the drama works super well, and then you're adding a little bit with the bottom right here. Now again, when it comes to cropping like this and the landscape, the basic idea is that you want to have a 1/3 of the land and 2/3 of the sky when it comes to the cropping, like right in this case. Or when the land is your main subject, you want to have a 2/3 of the land and 1/3 of the sky. It's just a kind of a starting general point, and it works quite well. Also, when I look at the cropping, you can see how the horizon isn't really straight. Now that can be fixed quite easily by using something like geometry. It usually sorts it, as you can see, really easily, and it's done. But either way, Geoff, thank you very much for sending us your photos. Well done on both of them. There's few things to fix, but other than that, good job. Moving on to the next photographer, Leon. Leon, let's have a look at your photos. Let's see, just to make sure that we have the original captures. So let's jump to it. Leon, we have this photo of the lady standing on a path, obviously hiking with lots of autumn colors. And then we have these lovely mushrooms in a forest. Now, out of them two, I like both of them. I am big fan of adding people to the pictures where they bring some kind of a message to the photo, or when they help to, for example, showcase the size of certain rocks or certain buildings. I don't know exactly what it does here. I think it's a little bit of shame that if the lady is there, that she's kind of cut off. So I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I love this picture. I think that works really, really nice. I really like how the background is blurry, but not to the degree where you can't recognize the back. I think it's done really nicely. I love the composition here, and it's well done. So technically, I think there is nothing really wrong technically on this photo. I really like how you can see parts of the trees and things at the back. If the lady wouldn't be here, I guess there would be a really nice path. Although everything is sharp. The light is and the scene is quite interesting. So there is nothing much I would add to this scene. What you were doing, you were using your Sony ISO 100, 4.3 millimeters, 125 of a second. So the setting is right. Again, interesting picture. If you want to leave people in, always make sure that they are fully in focus and that everything from them is in the actual frame. I think it's a shame that you're missing the part here. Composition wise, let's have a look. I think if you have the person in, you really want her to be in the center. So I would do something like this, and that's it. I think other than that, I wouldn't do much. I think post-processing is quite clean. Nothing much I could add here. To be honest, the front missing a little bit of a contrast, but I would need a raw file for it to kind of open up a little bit more. But in overall, well done on this one. When we talked about this one, it's a shame that it's kind of low quality. It's only 82 kilobytes because anytime I zoom in or start to really look at the picture, I see lots of noise and lots of blur, and that's not necessarily because the picture was like this. It's more to do with the fact that it's a really low quality. So let's just talk about what we know. Obviously this part all in focus, including the mushrooms. Well done on that. Well done on the depth of the field. I am getting even some of the bokeh here, and I think it works very well. Again, I like the fact that you can recognize some parts of the background. I think it works so much better. I think the completely blurry background is overused these days, and you haven't done it. Well done. When we talk about light, it's quite interesting. It's nice diffused. There are nice, very pleasant shadows, so very good there. When it comes to composition, super well done. I think this really works. The mushrooms are there like they meant to be. There's some nice golden at the back. Well done, well done. And post-processing, I just think there is a little bit too much of a green for me. But other than that, I think it works super well. So Leon, thank you very much for sending us your photos. If you send us pictures in the future, and we hope that you will, make sure that you send them in a little bit higher quality so we can review them a little bit deeper. But in overall, I love your photos. Thank you again for sharing them with us. And I hope to see more of them in the future. Moving on to the next photographer, we have a Nicki Green. Nicki, 2 black and white photos. So let's jump straight to them. Let's talk about this one, which I absolutely love. Stunning composition, lovely contrasty black and white photo with the lovely idea. Well done on this one. Moving on this one, again, a nice black and white photo, a little bit more happening here and a little bit busier scene with not too interesting sky. So if I would have to choose between two of them, I would prefer the stairs, but anyway, it's still lovely 2 captures. So let's talk about them. Technically, I'm seeing lots of noise on the picture, but then looking at the side here, it almost looks like this is maybe a picture you printed and then you take a picture for us, which is a little bit of a shame if that's the case, but because obviously then it's difficult to judge it. You can see lots of noise in these areas. I quite like this kind of sunlight leak if it was on the picture before. I think that's quite nicely done. I think everything is sharp, so that's good as well. It's really interesting light coming from the top. And overall, it's a lovely photo. Composition wise, I think it also again works very well. Again, I'm not sure about this part here, so I can't really judge how exactly it was framed, but from what I see, I think it worked quite well. Post-processing is perfect. I love the kind of gradient and shades of gray and dark and white. Nothing much I can add here, Nicki. It's a lovely picture, and obviously when it comes to this kind of interior, you know what you're doing. Well done. Talking about this one, it's just it's compared to the problem is that I saw this picture first. So now when I look at this one, it's not the most interesting photo on the world, you know. Obviously the boat as a foreground is a great idea with a little bit of reflection, but then the background isn't interested at all. Also, it's really minimal, so then you have this huge amount of sky which is lacking texture, and if I would look at it, I would probably see if I could maybe even crop it and get something like that to take away some of the sky. Again, just as always, if certain parts of the picture, don't add anything to your scene, just don't include them because they don't give you anything. I think similarly this bridge here doesn't really do much for us, so maybe even the cropping to do something like this, and that already starting to be a little bit more interesting. If we would want, we could again use a radial gradient, not radial gradient, we would use a linear gradient and actually close the sky on a top to do something like this, and then suddenly we getting even more interesting. We could create radial gradient here and really highlight the boat, so something like this could work. And then you could just use your brush and do some basic dodge and burn on certain parts. So let's say you could darken certain areas just like this here, and obviously not as strong. And then you could brighten certain areas like this, and to add even more contrast to the actual photo, and like this. So when you push it a little bit, it could be interesting photo. Really your main subject is the boat, so that's what you want to focus on. Take away all the parts which are not interesting and you're getting something really special. So Nicki, thank you so much for sending us both of the photos. I think your black and white is great. I think your post-processing is very careful and very natural. I really like how you don't go for crazy dark colors, but rather stay with very natural gradient of grays and whites, and I think it works very well. So Nicki, if you have a moment, join us on our Facebook group at Clever Photographer Academy. We have lots of people coming together and trying to learn and from each other and have lots of fun. So if you have a moment, check it out and come and join us. And if not, make sure you send us more pictures in the future. We would love to see them. Moving on the next photographer, we have a Peter here. Peter, we have 2 photos from you. So let's check them out. Peter, so first one right here is some kind of cathedral. And it's really, really dark and in the night with nice lamp star here with a little bit of the light artifacts here. And then we have something that is like... it's almost like a watermill wheel or something like that. So let's talk about them. I think, Peter, to be honest, this is captured well too late. And when you capture something this late, this is where you start to lose completely parts of the buildings, just like in this case here, in this case here, in this case here. The contrast is just so big that parts starting to disappear, and it's really tricky. When it comes to the kind of night blue hour photography, yes, it can be done, but you need really kind of defined subjects, or you need to shoot a little bit earlier. So the rule of blue hour photography when it comes to cityscape or cathedrals or buildings like this is usually to shoot about 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes, maximum half an hour after the sunset or after the lampposts switch on. That is the golden time when you can capture a picture like this. You will still get some kind of texture and light in the sky, and that will help you to avoid pictures like this where you get completely dark sides. So technically, even though your cathedral is sharp and spot on, I think your exposure is spot on and the focus is great and the light is nice, it's a wrong time of the day. Let's see if I push the shadows. I could a little bit, and then I start to get back some parts of the photo. I even see some of the stars, but I would just suggest you to go and shoot a little bit earlier. When it comes to composition, I'm not sure about this part, what it actually is. And I think it's really confusing. It looks like another building or wall. If that's the case, I wish you could have been a little bit higher or see how you could work in order to avoid it. Also, I'm not 100% sure that the building is actually upright right. Let's see if we use auto. Yeah, that I thought this helps a little bit. But other than that, it's actually quite nice. It's kind of straight on composition because of the shape of the building is not that flat, and it's still quite lovely. So my main problem with this one is that it was so late that you starting to lose some parts of the building. So just something to think of for the future. Post-processing wise, nothing wrong with it. It's a very natural edit. I really like it. Natural colors. So well done on that, Peter. Moving on this one. Peter, So that is the movement of the wheel, obviously, which is kind of a little bit blurry. But technically, where is the main focus? I'm wondering where you actually focused. It looks like this part is in focus and maybe the middle part, also a little bit of the wall. I think the movement is interesting. Let's have a look. We have your information. What did you use? 1/20th of the second. So I think it would be better if it would be either completely frozen, so obviously higher shutter speed, or if it would be a little bit more blurry. Also, blurry shots like this works really well when they are in contrast with something what's not blurry. So let's say if you would take this picture of this wheel straight on and you would have a certain parts which holds the wheel to be completely in focus and next to it this blurry wheel, it really works. But when you look at this picture, when there is so much blur, it's almost start to look like it's a picture, it's just a blurry picture. You know, you're kind of missing some holding elements of the blur. So, for example, when you're taking picture of the river and there is the kind of movement and you use a little bit longer exposure and the water becomes silky, you want your rocks and stones to be sharp, pinpoint sharp, so then they give you the holding elements, which then helps understand the viewer that actually the movement and the silky water and the movement of your wheel is actually captured in purpose that way, that it's not that you just move your camera, it became blur and then you call it an art. So that would be my suggestion for next time. Try to make the contrast between the blur and not blur. Next thing, from the technical point of view, I think the light isn't really perfect, and it's more about the composition. It's very confusing, very busy scene. I think anybody who's looking at it don't know really where to look. There is some kind of contrast, but it's just a little bit overwhelming, the whole photo. So I would look for something a little bit simpler, starting maybe with the straight on and see where it takes you. Post-processing, nothing really wrong again. I really like the nice contrast. I like your natural color. I can see that that's something what you're very good at. And Peter, if you have more pictures, make sure you send them to us in the future. We would love to see them and see how you're getting on with your photography. Moving on the next photographer, we have a Rick. Rick, let's have a look at your photos. As far as I remember, you sent us quite a few of them, but right now we have those two. So we have the horse here in black and white running with a little horse on the side. And then we have two horses jumping on the picture here. So let's talk about them. First of all, Rick, I think it's a little bit of a shame. And I don't know if it's because of the way it was transferred or so on. But the horses look a little bit blurry to me. Let's see if I can zoom less. Something like this. You can see they kind of blurry compared to the grass around them, which I think is a huge shame because obviously the horse is your main subject. Then I'm also getting these kind of white artifacts around, which I wonder if this was a picture you printed and then you took a picture of it, or I'm not really sure, but I think the movement is a really shame. And when I look at the grass, it looks like the grass is sharp and the horse isn't. So I'm not sure about that, Rick. Talking about this one, I think this one, the problem is the quality of the actual image. When I zoom in, let me show you. When I zoom in at the actual subject, it's so blurry that you can almost recognize what's on the picture. So Rick, my first suggestion before anything else for future is to send us your photo in a better quality. You want us to look at your photos in the best quality possible. Also, other people looking at your photos and you want to showcase yourself in the best quality you can. So that would be my first suggestion. When it comes to technical part, I quite like this photo. I think it's a lovely black and white, very natural edit. However, again, the horses are blurry. And when your main subject is blurry, it's really tricky. I also don't like these little dots. And again, I don't know if that's because it was a picture you took a picture of, or it's something what was left behind. It's like a sensor dust. Obviously, it could be really easily removed by using the sensor dust removal tool. You see how it kind of just goes very quickly, and that would help as well. And that's it on this one. Technically, I think my biggest problem is the quality of the photo, and because the quality is low, I can't really say how much of a sharpness is on the picture. The light seems to be quite interesting, but that's about as much as I can say on this. Talking about your composition. I think this composition is absolutely stunning. I think it's lovely. The animals arriving into the frame looks really cool. Obviously, you would wish that the little horse, the baby horse, would arrive a little bit earlier so you can see more of them, or even be in front, but I understand that that is very difficult to achieve when you're shooting live animal, but you can always shoot for the stars, so that would be the shoot for the star. But in overall, this composition is very, very good. I really like it, and I don't have much to add here. On this one, I think there is lots of this unnecessary grass in the foreground. I don't think, again, if it doesn't add anything to the story, it doesn't need to be there, and this definitely doesn't add anything. I think your main subjects are definitely the horses, so you just wish you were closer. Obviously, you could crop it off. If I just switch this off and then get something like this, and that would be more than enough. You want the viewer to focus on the horses. Now the horses are not in the center, so I'm not really sure about, obviously you would be more going for something like this, because your main subject would be definitely the two horses jumping. Also, you want to avoid cutting your horses half or side. You see how, like here, you want to try to avoid this as much as possible, Rick. But other than that, composition wise, something like this. That's it. That's as much as I would add to it. So I would just crop it a little bit more and go for something like this. It's almost like a scene from Marlboro cigarettes ad. Quite cool. When it comes to post-processing, again, I love this one. I think it really works. There could be done a little bit more of a kind of dodge and burn. So the brighten certain areas and darken certain areas, just like this here, to really kind of work on these parts. And not that much, maybe just something like this, and that's about it. When it comes to this one, I'm not sure about the white balance, to be honest. It's really kind of yellowy, paley. When I try the auto, it doesn't help much. I almost wonder if this picture also shouldn't be turned to black and white. It would maybe help. I'm assuming because of the movement of the horses, there was a lot of dust, and it kind of really makes the picture look flat, because everything has the same color. As you can see from here all the way here, it's the same shade, same color, and it's kind of losing the contrast a little bit. So Rick, something to look at for the future. But anyway, I love horse photography, so I hope you can send us more pictures in the future, because we would love to see them. Moving on to the next photographer, we have a Stevie. Stevie, you sent us 2 photos, and let's have a look at it. So we have obviously a motorbike guy. I wonder if it's like a race, which I think is super cool panel, full on details, lovely light, brilliant capture, Stevie. Now then, moving on this one. Now when you go from this to this, it's a little bit tricky. Obviously you have a lovely bird, but you can see the really heavy, harsh shadow at the back, which takes a little bit away. I'm assuming it was photographed during the day. Let's see if we have any information. Oh, maybe morning. However, it takes lots of the attention away. Is the dark shadow. Also, the bird in the contrast with the background, which is almost similar color, except the white, is a shame as well. So the 2 levels of the photography, this one almost perfect. This one has a bit to go. So technically this one brilliant, everything sharp, lovely light, lovely technique with the panning, brilliant photo. When it comes to composition, maybe I wish there was a little bit more of a road on the side, but there's nothing wrong about this tie crop. I think it actually really works, and well done on this picture. Post-processing also, I wouldn't add much. Just keep an eye on these white parts to make sure that you don't overexpose them and burn them. Always keep an eye on your whites. As you can see, when I hit whites and I hold Option or Alt, you can see everything what whites is burned, and it actually lost all the details. And when I bring it all the way down, the whites are still there. So for the future, just keep an eye on it, especially when you have a raw file. You can quite often help to it a little bit. Now moving on this one, technically, let's zoom in on the actual bird. It's quite nice and sharp, to be honest, but the light is unfortunate. The background is unfortunate. I already captured it. I think the framing as well is a bit unfortunate. There is this huge part of the picture which doesn't give us anything extra. Let's have a look if we have any information. You use your 440 millimeters, ISO 800, 1/500 of a second. I wonder even why you had to go for 1/800 of a So ISO 1800, which is really high for this kind of photography. It looks like it's some kind of full-on light. You should be able to go with your ISO lower. I'm sure you know that lower the ISO, less the noise. When I zoom in, because of the ISO, you're kind of losing some of the details. Obviously, ideally, you would go for much tighter crop. Let's see if we could do something like maybe like this. If we don't want to reduce completely the island, maybe like this. It's a little bit better. Again, I think the background, yeah, very similar color to the bird and something to work on. So just in overall, Stevie, I think this is not as strong picture as the first one. Something to work on and something to keep an eye. Keep an eye on the background of the animal always. Keep an eye on the shadows. Even though you're shooting during the day, there are certain ways how you can shoot, certain angle how you can shoot the animal without getting this really strong shadow. Again, it would be also lovely if there would be actually bigger reflection of the bird. I am sure that you thrilled with the capture. I like wildlife photography, but there could be a little bit more done there. The first picture was great, and Stevie, I hope you have more photos to share with us. I would love to see them in the future. Also, if you haven't joined us yet at our Clever Photographer Academy Facebook group, make sure you head there and join us. We would love to see more from you, and we would love to hear and learn from you how you capture pictures like this. Anyway, moving on the next photographer and the last photographer from the mix photography styles, we have a picture from Vanessa here. And let's have a look. Why we have only one picture? Vanessa, I wonder if you haven't sent us picture in the past, which I already reviewed for you in the group. Anyway, let's have a look at it. So we have this stunning dog with a boy holding it. And actually, I really like this photo. It's very kind of dreamy, artistic. It's almost coming across as it was like a water paint. And it's really lovely effect. So let's talk about it. Technically, let's have a look if we have any information, and we do you use your Canon and you use your what's your lens, 135mm lens. Okay, the only art I would kind of tell you is the high ISO, something to keep an eye on. This is why you get all this noise here. Again, shooting, it almost looked like a midday. I know it's not a midday, but it's early afternoon. I don't think you need to be on 1/800 of a second for the two to be sharp. I think you could go a little bit lower, and then you could bring your ISO down and lose some of the noise. Other than that, everything is sharp. I really like the nice bouquet at the back of them, which works really well. I like how you left some details, which adds a little bit to the storytelling, and it's really lovely. Now, composition wise, it's brilliant. I think the kind of whole shape of the boy holding the dog, and then dog facing, you just kind of wish that he would be looking at you, but other than that, it works really well. Storytelling also works really well, how the boy looking at the dog and the dog kind of looking away. He looks a little bit scared, and the dog holding him. It just works for me. I think, Vanessa, this is a lovely capture, and I'm really happy with it. I think the color and the white balance also works very nicely. It's almost kind of palette colors, and it's a great capture, Vanessa. So thank you and well done on that. Post-processing, again, I don't know if, yeah, you see how you have the face on the rule of third, and then everything kind of developed from there. I like how you kept a little bit of space here to give them a little bit of a breathing. Again, I really like the color. I think the saturation is pushed a little bit, but I think it really works for this kind of photography, and I think it really shows your style. So well done on that, Vanessa, and send us more pictures in the future. I know you're already with us in the Facebook Academy group, so thank you for that as well, and take care. We hope to see pictures in the future. And that goes to all of you guys. If you want to join us for our photography review show, we do this every week on Mondays. The way to join us is to go to our website, www.cleverphotographer.com/review, and that's where you can see all the links, all the upcoming schedules, and you can find out how you can join us and how you can upload your photos so we can review them in this show. Thank you again, and until next time, keep shooting.